Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
What's up?
Currently, as we're recording this podcast, it is April 11th. It'd be funny if I release this show not on time. I'm going to start saying the date every show so I can just release them on time. But
yeah, you probably should.
Whenever this gets released, congratulations. But I only bring up the date to say that the NFL draft is officially just over 2 weeks away.
Wow, it is.
I feel like last year it was very slow.
Getting to the draft.
Getting to the draft was very slow. And I feel like now it was just very, I don't know what it is, very fast.
Yeah, I'm glad. Probably because we weren't as busy last year. That's usually what it is.
That's true. But anyway, welcome into the pod. Today we're going to break down some of the coach hirings that have happened over the last couple months and the changes to each coaching staff and team that has been made moving into the season. So we'll talk about some firings, mostly the head coach ones, and then we'll bring up anything related to the offensive side of the ball because that's what we do around here. We do fantasy football and we do offense. So we'll be talking about that today. Before we do, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on the YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below. So we did have some breaking news.
We did.
This weekend.
We did.
A wide receiver is off the board. And we still got D-Hop, who could be cut. I'm not really sure what's going on with D-Hop. And then the Jerry Jeudy stuff has been kind of tampered down, dead. And there was an account. Nothing happened, but there was an account that tweeted that in the next 24 hours we would get T. Higgins news. That was 24 hours ago.
Was it some brown check mark?
It was some brown check mark, yeah. So anyway, I believed it for a second. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to just keep an eye out for 24 hours and see what happens. That news could be anything, contract extension. But anyway, one of the other wide receiver guys that is available is Odell Beckham Jr., and he is he's no longer available. He went to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep.
Which my first initial reaction was Lamar's going back, and then my initial reaction was confirmed when Lamar Jackson was FaceTiming with Odell Beckham Jr. So,
yep.
I would say it would take a lot for Lamar not to be back with the Ravens next year. It wouldn't make a whole ton of sense if Lamar was like, "Hey, I got a new receiver," and then went to another team. So that doesn't make any sense. But Rick, fantasy fallout.
I don't hate it. I know the Ravens historically run the ball a lot. I think if they bring back Lamar, they're not going to run it as much as I think you would think, because last year they were actually throwing the ball a lot before Lamar got hurt.
Yeah.
And whatever that pace was, I think they would probably do it again. So the stigma that the Ravens run the ball like 600 times is kind of true, but it's kind of not to the extreme as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and Odell on the Ravens would at least be the number 1 or 2 option. Maybe not number 1 because if you include Andrews, so he's probably the second or third option, which still isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Where if he went to like the Cowboys, he's probably like the third or fourth option. If he went to the Chiefs, who knows? So I don't think it's awful. I don't love it at the same time.
Yeah.
It's kind of whatever. I know you're more down on Odell than I am. I don't think he's the same player he once was. I do think he still has maybe like a little something in the tank as like a a second or third receiver. But I'm probably not drafting him in drafts, with all that said.
Yeah. I mean, think we are going to talk about the Ravens' new OC today, and the effects that could have on the Ravens' offense. But I like Rick said, I just, to me, Odell. Here's the big thing with Odell. When you get into fantasy drafts, like now we know where he goes. He's kind of in an offense right now where like you have Rashad Bateman coming back this year, and it's the only real wide receiver on the team outside of now Odell. And, they do have an offense that historically doesn't, pass the football 600 times or even 500 times. So it's usually on the low end of like between 500 and 515. And that's just not enough pass catching opportunity for somebody to excel at the wide receiver position on the Ravens. And they haven't had a wide receiver one in a little bit. So, to me, the big thing with Odell is that I think the opportunity will be there because he is going to be the number one wide receiver. He stays healthy. There's going to be good fantasy production, but his last year with the Browns 4 years ago or whatever it was, or this was 4 years ago. His last 1,000 yard season was 4 years ago with the Browns, and it was like 1,025 yards. And so he just hasn't really, like, outside of that Super Bowl game where he looked really good and then tore his ACL, like
I think that year he was pretty good, or not that year, but when he was on the Rams,
he was good. But like, I think with Odell, the big thing for me is that there's a chance that he could go out and provide good fantasy production and do that. There's a chance that happens. But there's name value attached to him. So when you get to your fantasy drafts in August, or in early September, people are going to be looking at Odell on the board, and they're going to be like, oh, here we go. There's always that one kid sees Odell and says, I'm drafting him.
Right.
And I would just rather take younger, more talented players than Odell Beckham Jr. If he falls, then maybe in the late draft I would take him, but like there's a lot of players that I'd look at where it's like, this guy is younger and I'd rather take a shot on him. I'd rather take a shot on JSN than have Odell, or Zay Flowers than have Odell. And those guys are rookies, and I'm not really with the rookie wide receivers, especially this class. So it's like, like to me, I'm going to go after younger receivers who are poised for a breakout, that maybe have higher, that have lower floors and could bust, then go after Odell and chase a season where he could catch 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns and be a wide receiver 4. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I'd rather go with the younger guy than go with Odell Beckham. So, do with that what you will.
Yeah, and I agree. I'd rather take the upside play in those later rounds, which is probably where he'll go. I don't think he goes that high in drafts, but still, I would agree. I'd rather take like those upside guys than someone like Odell. But you never know, especially if he really falls and he's like, it's like the last round. Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be a good value in like those 13, 14, 15 rounds. I don't think he falls that far though.
Yeah. But I think he had like one ridiculous catch and some good years with the Giants. And since then,
I think it was injuries, man.
Injuries could very well be that, but he just, since he got the injuries on the Giants, he's not been the same receiver. He has not been the same player. So it's like everyone every year just keeps talking about Odell and how Odell is going to change a receiver. And I didn't want him on the Patriots because I didn't think he changes anything. He's not any different than, people would disagree with this, but I don't think he's really much different than Devontae Parker. So it's like, it's just, you get all friggin' excited and it's just, he's not that receiver anymore. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I get it. I think he's still, I would still take him over Parker, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I take him over Parker too. I just mean like he's,
at this point in his career, he's not he's not a difference maker.
Yeah.
But I think he's still I think he's still a decent role player receiver. He's still a decent 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you want that on your fantasy team.
Yeah, I don't. All right, let's talk about some coach hirings. these are, I always like to say this is probably like not the most watched or exciting podcast that we do on the year. Specifically because, we talk about players. We don't talk about coaches.
Right.
We're in fantasy football for players, but if you're breaking, if you're in the thick of it with us in the off season and you're in April and you're listening to Fantasy Football Podcast for Redraft, coach hirings are very, very important, whether in Dynasty or Redraft, to how an offense succeeds. Last year, going into the season, you saw the New England Patriots with Matt Patricia, Joe Judge as an offensive coordinator. There wasn't a single fantasy asset on that team, with the exception of maybe Rondre Stevenson, that was really good for fantasy football. And Myers was okay at times, but it just, that offense was atrocious. And when you have a really bad offense, or you have, certain situations with your offensive coordinator and they're just not good at the job, you're not going to have a whole lot of fantasy assets on that team. So that's something to keep an eye out on, and as well as play call tendencies and what coaches tend to like to do. Does this coach like to, go running back by committee? Is that a trend for them based on what they've done in the past and the teams that they've worked for in the past? Or are they a guy that likes to throw the ball all over the yard? Do they like split, reps? Do they throw it primarily to the slot position? They drop plays that do that. They like the tight ends like Bill O'Brien does. So like it really is. It just depends on the person, and so we're gonna break down every offense that changed their offensive coordinator or head coach or both, and talk about what the changes might be. Now, to preface this, defensive coordinators becoming head coaches typically have an offensive guy that they bring with them. And that guy will develop the offense. So,
right.
So we'll talk about mostly the offensive coordinator on those guys. Some of these teams are offensive-minded guys that brought over a offensive coach to be their coordinator, but they're going to be running the offense. So if it's a defensive guy, most likely not touching the offense. If it's an offensive guy, most likely not touching the defense. And the offensive coordinator head coaches are the ones that will really, if they got a job, we're going to hone in on those guys and see what the development might be there. But there is also some offensive coordinator changes for football teams outside of, head coaching changes. So we'll talk about all the offensive coordinator / head coach changes in this section.
Right.
Starting
now,
with,
there are a lot, so we are going to go through these pretty quick, right, Morgan?
Yes. But anyway, we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. They hire Jonathan Gannon, defensive coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles, as their head coach. So I will say this guy seems like a joke.
Is he the guy that did the handshake?
Yeah, he's the guy that did the weird handshake. And then
he's this year's.
Oh, God. No, he's worse
They're
than
going to tank, bro. They're tanking for Caleb Williams. They're going to trade Kyler. You heard it here first.
That was like a mental developing take to then realize like, crap, they have Kyler Murray.
Well, no. So Kyler's probably going to miss half the Cardinals are going to be awful this year. They're going to lose Hopkins. They lost some of their defensive guys. Kyler's going to miss. He tore his ACL against the Pats in what was that, week 14, 15?
Yeah.
So he's probably not going to be ready week 1. Mm-hmm. I could see them sitting him for half the season, and if they really blow without him, which they probably will, they might just shut him down.
Yeah.
And then they just tank.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be it, but I do think you have Kyler.
I don't think that I know. But if Kyler's out.
Yeah.
Well, if you get if you get the first overall pick in next year's class, though, you get a generational type quarterback prospect.
You'll figure it out.
I don't know. I don't know what they would choose
to do. You draft him and figure it out later. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in football, though. I think this worst team.
That's fair. But I don't think they're. I mean, who on their team? Because we'll talk fantasy wise. Who on their team do you really feel like is a good fantasy asset? Outside of maybe Hollywood. This is without Kyler Murray. I assume Kyler Murray's hurt.
Well, I mean, nobody.
Right.
I'm not really interested in anyone.
Hollywood will probably still get drafted. James Conner will probably still get drafted.
I was like, yeah, they still got James Conner, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, Jonathan Gannon is like, if you saw the video, go Google it.
Yeah.
Completely embarrassing. He is. After last year with Mike McDaniel getting hired and calling Tua and saying all kinds of weird stuff, like that was the first I ever saw of him, and I was like, this guy seems like either a mad genius or a complete disaster. Jonathan Gannon doesn't even have the genius side.
Yeah.
This hiring reminds me of when the Patriots went to the Super Bowl against the Eagles and benched Malcolm Butler, got toasted by Nick Foles, and then Matt Patricia got hired by the Lions and sucked.
Yep.
And that's essentially what this is. You got toasted by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and then you get a job as an offensive coordinator, and your defense blew in the Super Bowl. That's what this feels like. So not a good hire for the Cardinals. But he does bring with him this man by the name of Drew Petzing. He was the quarterbacks coach from the Cleveland Browns last year. Some history over the last 4 to 6 years. He was assistant quarterbacks coach with Minnesota in 2018, and then he was wide receivers coach in 2019. Then he went to Cleveland. He is the tight ends coach in 2020, 2021. Cleveland Browns quarterback coach in 22, and now he's the offensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals. So he makes a jump to OC this year. I would assume that this is the West Coast Shanahan offense.
Yeah, he actually comes from Kevin Stefanski, because he was with Cleveland, and before that he was with Minnesota. So he's been under him.
Yeah, which is that same
Sean
McVay,
right, which is that systems. So it feels like maybe a lot of running the ball and play action, which is not how the Cardinals have been. They've been a West Coast style, like the Cliff Kingsbury shot out of the shotgun, just chucking it all over the field.
No, that was the what do they call that in college? Air raid.
Yeah, yes. That was the Cliff. I can't say his name.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Thank you. That was his offense, but yeah, it feels like they're going to completely shift, which I think is probably, if it ends up working out, I think that's good for Kyler. I think it's good it takes pressure off of him. Mm-hmm. It's good for James Conner. But that's if they're good, which I don't believe they will be.
Yeah.
So.
I've never heard of this guy, so he could be either good or he could just be complete garbage. We'll find out.
Right.
There's just not enough history about him. Like this could be like, this is his first OC job. So it's like, he could be really good. He could be an up and coming guy or he could be really bad. But as long as the Jonathan Gannon guy's not touching the offense, we're okay. But I do agree with Rick. The play action, they're going to run it. They're going to run plays off play action, which could help Kyler in some aspects. I'm curious if they're going to try to intertwine. Like, he's a different kind of quarterback. So it's like, I don't know how he's going to fit in with that system. I would imagine it looks somewhat like what they tried to do with Trey Lance in San Francisco for like 2 games. So we'll definitely see what happens with that. But I do think what you saw in Cleveland was it was split in the backfield, with a majority of carries going to one guy, and then third down reps coming in for Kareem Hunt. Based on where what's his name came from, Kevin Stefanski, they had Dalvin Cook. So if you have a talented enough guy sitting there in the backfield, they'll use him. It's not going to be like a forced running back by committee. And they had 2 running backs that were really good, so that's what they did in Cleveland. So I think what you're going to see with this guy is they'll probably give James Conner, if he stays healthy, around 250 touches on the season. That would be my guesstimation there. But we'll see what happens with that. I don't disagree with Rick. I don't think the Cardinals are going to be that amazing of a football team this year. I think their ceiling is probably like 8 wins. They just don't.
Yeah.
Kyler has.
That's I think you have, if they win 8 games, they'll need Kyler for most of the season.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with some of that stuff, but keep an eye on Petzing. There's some interesting stuff going on there. We'll see if any of it works. The Ravens fired their OC. Can't remember his name.
Was it Greg Roman?
Greg Roman. Fired the OC. Greg Roman invented this offense with Lamar Jackson after Joe Flacco was out of there. And Todd Monken takes over after I don't know if they fired him or he just left.
They fired him.
Okay. All right. Fired. See you later. So Todd Monken he has a long history, but just the last couple of years, he was the OC for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2018. I think
that was Jameis, bro. Was that the 30 for 30?
30 year? I don't know.
I don't think that was.
It might have been 2019. But anyway, he was the OC for Tampa in 2018, Cleveland Browns OC in 2019, and then he went to Georgia and was
the year before the 30-30 year.
Yeah. So he was the 30-30 year he was in Cleveland. He went and has been the OC and quarterbacks coach at Georgia for from 2020 to 2022. So that massive run with George Stetson, or Stetson Bennett, not George Stetson. My goodness. So and they went to two national championships in that time. Interesting. I don't see much changing here.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know his coaching style, so I couldn't tell you. But Greg Roman was like the leader of we got to run the football.
Yeah.
So he could be the same way, but if he's not, that might lead to more passing for the Ravens. I don't know his coaching style. I will say it's kind of gross. Last time he was in the NFL, 2019, the OC for the Browns. That was Baker's second year where he was coming off a great rookie season and then had an awful year too.
Good news.
So that kind of is scary a little bit. But then he was great in Georgia. So I don't know. Maybe he was able to figure it out, because there's been guys that go to college and then come back and then they're much better coaches for it.
Yeah.
I think Dayball was like that, right? When he was at Bama and then went to the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
I
think so.
I think that was the order it went.
So,
but yeah, either way, it'll be interesting to see. I kind of want to do more research on his coaching style, but he's someone that you should keep an eye on for how the Ravens might play on offense.
So the last 3 seasons that he's been the OC.
Okay, so that includes the Tampa years?
Yeah. His running backs were split.
Okay.
So
that doesn't change anything, feels like.
Yeah, that probably won't change anything. And then Stetson Bennett, the only year was 2020. His first year, Zamir White had 144 carries. The next closest guy was James Cook with 44. So he didn't really, like, the running back position at that point was workhorse. But the other years, he split down the middle with those guys. So and then, like, Stetson Bennett this year had 4,000 passing yards. So I don't know. I mean, if he could take a crap bag like that dude and get him to throw the ball, maybe he can do it to the other guys. But it was a pretty even split rushing, 557 attempts, 454 pass attempts. So like I said, I don't see much changing here for the Baltimore Ravens. I think that Harbaugh has been there for so long. That's
true.
That's the
but
head
Harbaugh
coach,
is a defensive guy, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, Todd Monken could change things for them and maybe pass the ball a little bit more, but just based on this, like, I don't see them passing it any more than they did in the past. Like, I don't know. I think they're going to try to rush the ball, split snaps, and...
Why do you think they would get rid of Greg Roman, though, if they weren't going to try to...
Unless they were trying to move on from Lamar Jackson, I don't know.
I guess that's...
It might have been stale, too. It might have been a
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Ravens fans hate Greg Roman, so
good luck with Todd Monken, guys. But like I said, I don't see much changing here for the Baltimore Ravens. I think their offense will stay much the same because at this point you have Lamar Jackson. So if Jackson is staying, like, you're not going to try to do things differently with Lamar Jackson.
I mean, I wouldn't say differently, but
they're going to rush the ball. I think maybe the offensive style will be fine, but, like, you know, will change and be different. But, like, I don't think they're going to pass the ball all over the yard because they got Todd Monken. Like, we know what they do. They like to run the ball. They like to design.
See, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to tell you they're still going to run the ball a lot. I'm not saying they're not, but I think, especially if you want to keep Lamar healthy, I think they're going to throw the ball more this year.
Okay, all right.
I won't say it's drastic though, but
let's talk about the next team. which is I was going to say the Indianapolis Colts because I see the name, but that's not true. Carolina Panthers, they fired Matt Rule. That was from week 3 on. I kind of anticipated they were going to fire that guy. What a complete disaster he was as a head coach. But Frank Reich takes over. We kind of know what Frank Reich is. He has an offensive coordinator past with Philly, San Diego, and when I say San Diego, that's all the way back with the Chargers. But then
it's very special.
He's been the head coach. He's one of those head coaches where it's like he's a very, very good head coach in the NFL, and the Colts kind of underperformed in many years. So this probably is Frank Reich's last opportunity, but I think he's a really good head coach, which is probably why he got snatched up right away by Carolina. But based on the history that we saw with Indy, it felt like he wanted to, specifically with the running backs, split.
Yeah,
but then
Taylor
they drafted Jonathan Taylor, and they were like, probably should use this kid. And so they brought in Miles Sanders, Carolina, and they don't really have anyone else there. And we'll see if they draft somebody. But to me, this could be a situation where, it feels like they're a football. My thing is like, did they run the football because they had Jonathan Taylor and is the only way they could win football games? Or is that Frank Reich's style?
Well,
because he did take Nick Foles to the Super Bowl.
Those Eagles teams ran the ball for sure, but that was a passing offense.
Lot. Yeah.
The Chargers teams that he was on was a passing offense. He used to be a quarterback's coach. He played as a quarterback in the NFL for a decade. I think he wants to throw the ball. But that said, you're going to have a rookie quarterback.
Bryce Stroud,
yep. So I think they're going to play it, or he's going to play it similar to what he did with the Colts. But it could be something where they year one they might run the ball a lot, and then they slowly throw the ball more. If he stays the head coach, like if he's the coach for 3 years, I think each year the arrow points up for pass attempts. But I think year one, I do think they're going to run the ball a decent amount with the rookie quarterback. So I do like the hiring. I think it's a good hiring.
Great hiring.
It's a good offensive mind. I'm not going to go as far as to say it was as good as the Doug Peterson hire from last year. Because I think Peterson, it was also they went from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson, so that's one thing. And the Panthers aren't going from like awful, although Matt Rule wasn't good. So I don't know, maybe
they are kind of going off from awful to good.
Yeah,
he's one of those coaches too. Like Matt Rule comes in and he's trying to figure it out, and I think a guy like Frank Reich, he's a culture builder, if that makes sense. So he's a guy that walks into a room and he tries to build a culture for a football team, and not just like putting like Jonathan Gannon's going to walk into that room and he's just going to try to coach and lead meetings.
Right.
Frank Reich is he's a leader. You know what I mean? He's a dude that will set the team culture from the start, and that's something I think Carolina needs after a bunch of years of not having that.
Sure. And now they're going to have supposedly a good head coach, a good leader, and you get the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, good things.
Feels like they're really building something there in Carolina. And potentially,
you might even. I'm not going to lie, Frank. You might be able to win the. Was it the South over there?
Yeah, they might. They honestly might.
They all suck over there. So, good luck.
Their defense is good enough.
But I do like Miles Sanders. They don't have DJ Moore anymore, so you don't have to think about that. I don't know what they're going to do at receiver.
Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen, yeah.
Didn't they get Chark too? Whole lot of mid.
Oh dear God.
They have Chark and Thielen right now. Terrace Marshall.
I want to see what they do in the draft, and then I'll kind of give you an update as to how I feel about.
Well, they traded all their picks to get number 1.
Unbelievable. All right.
I think they do have 1 second.
Yeah, this is going to be. I think it's going to be a little bit rough at first. And like Rick said, there's going to be a lot of Miles Sanders involved. So. Their offensive coordinator is Thomas Brown. Don't need to spend any time on that. Cowboys fired Kellen Moore, and they hired Brian Schottenheimer. Is he related to Marty?
I think so.
Okay. as the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. This is interesting. This is an interesting hire, and it was an interesting firing. I don't think it's your coaches there, Dallas. I think it's your suckbag quarterback.
I don't love this hiring.
I don't love it either. I don't think it's a particularly good hiring.
He was the passing game coordinator in Trevor Lawrence's rookie season. Think about that for a second. Yeah, that's kind of gross.
I was trying to see
he does have a lot of experience though as an offensive coordinator. I don't know how good, but
yeah, he has a lot of offensive coaching experience.
Right.
When did Seattle go to the Super Bowls?
That was like 2014, 15, 16, okay. I think.
All right. Never mind.
It was before he was the OC.
Yeah, he's got a lot of history, and I don't know if it's good history.
That's what I'm saying. The only thing, those Rams, he was the Jets OC for 5 years. That was the years they had Favre, who underperformed, and they made the AFC Championship with Mark Sanchez and a bum offense. So I'm not liking what I'm seeing here.
I don't like it either. Now, yeah, I will say, I don't like Kellen Moore ran the offense a lot.
But Mike McCarthy is an offense coach.
That's
right?
They took away all play calling duties from him and gave them to Kellen Moore. This could be a signal that they're probably going to go with Mike McCarthy. Now, because he's an offensive-minded head coach, McCarthy dictates what's happening there. So I will say that this hiring isn't going to really change anything offensively for them. They'll probably stay much the same. Play calling might change a little bit, for better or worse. But I don't like this hiring at all if you're Dallas. I don't really know what they're doing over there. They astound me sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Did Mike McCarthy take over the play calling duties at some point last year?
I don't remember.
I thought
he gave them up.
Oh, maybe it was. I thought it was the other way around. I thought he took it from Moore.
Oh, I can't remember.
But I could be wrong.
Okay, well,
but yeah, I don't think it changes much.
They're like battle of the mid.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the Denver Broncos. Fired their head coach Nathaniel Hackett. He didn't hack it. Sean Payton takes over as head coach, though, so they get the bag quarterback. They get the bag head coach. They get the one everyone wants.
Yep.
Sean Payton goes to coach Russell Wilson,
and he is an offensive coach, so it's going to be the Saints type of offense.
You have the freaking how many years? 15 years of coaching that he had with the New Orleans Saints. It could be
something like that.
Something like that. From 2013 to 2021. Wow, that was shorter than I anticipated. That's like 8 years. There's no way.
No, hold on. Let me look.
Something's wrong here.
I think he
got suspended. That's right. So he's been the head coach of the New Orleans Saints since 2006.
06.
Yeah. All right. I was like, something's not right here because he beat Peyton Manning back in the day with Drew Brees.
Right, which was like 2010 or something like
2006?
Oh yeah, was it that far?
I don't know.
Back?
Anyway. He has a long history in the NFL. He had one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game in Drew Brees. And he's going to a quarterback that will probably, I don't know, will he make the Hall of Fame? I think so. He's not playing like it right now, but he was pretty good in his time, and he's got a Super Bowl under his belt. So he might. But he's going to try to get the best out of Russell Wilson. And the style of offense that they ran for New Orleans all of those years is what they're going to run for the Denver Broncos. So, your running backs are probably going to end up getting the rock a lot. And you're going to play the death by 1,000 cuts game.
Yep.
Similar to what Brady did.
Yep.
So,
which is good for Russ.
Which is very good for Russ
at this point in his career.
Yep. And it's a shot game too. Like he can take the shots down the field. Russ still's got he's still got the accuracy. So if you just get him to move up underneath,
he just can't move like he used to. I don't think.
Yeah, he can't move like he used to. So But yeah, so I think it's a good hiring for Denver. It remains to be seen if Russ can still play the game of football. He's been trying to play the game of Instagram, and it doesn't really work out for him. So maybe he should just come back and play football. But supposedly they're going to take his office away, so that's good news.
Yeah, that's good. Take less from him. He was kind of in over his head.
So
yeah, I don't know. The Broncos are an interesting team because if the problem last year was really all Hackett, then they're going to be really good. But if the problem last year was Hackett sucks and your quarterback is washed, they're probably not going to be really good. So yeah, but it is a good hiring overall. I do like it for the Broncos. I love it for Javonte. The only problem is right now the early reports are that he's probably not going to be ready for week 1. Kind of reminds me of J.K. Dobbins last year.
Yeah.
Which is not good. So I don't know what the running back situation is going to be, but I'm actually I'm not in redraft. I'm not really that in on Russ, but in Dynasty, I think if you're in a super flex league, I kind of am sneaky in on Russ as being a good cheap option. Because he's just dead right now in a lot of leagues. He has no value, but he's someone who could have a slight bounce back year with Sean Payton. So I do like it for his standpoint. I like it for Jerry Jeudy. I wouldn't say I like it for Courtland Sutton necessarily because I don't think he's at that same level.
I was gonna say who's the Michael Thomas?
Oh, Jerry Jeudy.
Okay, yeah,
no question.
I agree. Unless they trade him, then it's Courtland Sutton.
Unless they trade him.
Yeah. So, good hiring for the Broncos, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that hard, and Denver knows what they're doing over there. I just dropped my freaking ring on the ground. Texans, they hired DeMeco Ryans, who is a defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. Is that correct?
Correct.
Offensive coordinator goes by the name of Bobby Slowick. Who be you,
just
Bobby?
Another 49ers offensive assistant.
Yeah, so
Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, so you're going to get the Kyle Shanahan style offense. I would imagine for the Texans. I mean, here's a big thing. With the running back position for the Texans, the Kyle Shanahan system doesn't really I would say they like to use multiple running backs. Specifically, Kyle Shanahan himself loves to use 14 different running backs, even when you have Christian McCaffrey on the football team. They drafted last year in the 4th round. What the hell's his name?
Damian Pierce.
And Pierce is one of those guys that if they do nothing, I like it.
Value.
That's good. I think you could draft him. He's going to be fine. If they draft a running back or they bring somebody else in.
Well, they did. They signed Devin Singletary.
That doesn't count.
See, I'm hoping that's all they do because I think that might be all they do.
Yeah, that could be all they do, but that could be one of those situations. I don't even know if Singletary fits into that style of running game, but yeah. So they're gonna run that Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan style offense, and they're gonna have a new quarterback as well. It's gonna be Stroud, Bryce Young, somebody of that ilk. So they'll have a new quarterback, and hopefully they just stick with Damian Pierce. If that's the case,
yep.
I like that asset. They don't have a wide receiver. They got rid of Brandon Cooks. So
Nico Collins, baby.
It's kind of just Nico Collins at this point. So we'll have to see what they do. Is
John Mechie going to play?
He should be
I
playing.
know.
I think he's better.
He might be. Yeah, I do like this for Damian Pierce.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't really know how good of a coach he is, but if he comes from the 49ers offense, it's usually pretty good things historically.
Yeah.
This sounds like the biggest smokescreen ever, but Adam Schefter was reporting that the Texans are unsure about drafting a quarterback at number 2. So take that for a grain of salt, but they could run it back with Davis Mills. I don't think it happens, but yeah, I do like it for Damian Pierce, but you'll have to see in the draft. And then for the receivers and the rest of the guys, they don't really have a lot of value anyway. So
yeah. If you're a bad football team, you're a bad football team. Colts fired Frank Reich, hired Jeff Saturday, fired Jeff Saturday, hired Shane Steichen from the Eagles. Eagles OC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And he is now the head coach. They got Jim Bob Cooter as the offensive coordinator. So Shane Steichen is going to be running the offense. This signals to me that they're drafting Anthony Richardson. I know there's been a lot of smoke screens about Will Levis. Not that they were planning on taking Anthony Richardson, so they got Shane Steichen, but the style of offense that he runs with Jalen Hurts and all of those running backs, this football team is going to pound the rock, and they're going to use the quarterback to pound the rock. And that quarterback is going to be Anthony Richardson. I'm going out on a limb here. But they will run it a lot, which is very good for Jonathan Taylor. I don't really like any of this the receivers were really good for the Eagles as well, but that's just, you have to take that with a grain of salt. So I like this move for the Colts. I don't think it's a bad hiring. And it'll be interesting to see how they utilize their assets with a rookie quarterback coming in. I'm not really excited for Michael Pittman. Lots of different changes happening there, so that's specifically the reason why. But I think their draft selection is going to be Anthony Richardson. They're going to run a very similar Eagles style offense this year, and that means a guy by the name of Jonathan Taylor is going to eat. Which I love.
Now, before he was with the Eagles, he was with the Chargers, and that was the year that Herbert, as a rookie, had like the best rookie season historically of all time. So he can, I feel like, run more of a pass-first offense where it is kind of a pocket passer-like quarterback.
Yeah.
But with the success of the Eagles last year or so, I would agree with you. I think it probably fits that mold better. But I like it. I actually like Mr. Shane here, but I think he's been a good OC for the Eagles. He was a good OC for the Chargers. I think he's a pretty good offensive mind. It does worry me, though, that I feel like Nick Sirianni's probably the offensive mind with the Eagles, so I don't know how much control he had with Philly. But I do like the coach. I like the hiring. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the Colts skill guys will have a bit of a bounce back because it can't get as bad as it was last year. Last year was rock bottom, I feel like, for guys like Jonathan Taylor is too talented to have a year like he did last year. Michael Pittman's too talented to have a year like he did last year. Quarterback's going to be a big factor, but I do like the hiring.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that was all of the head coach hirings. I think all 5. Jonathan Gannon, Frank Reich, Sean Payton, DeMeco Ryans, Shane Steichen. So this trend of offensive coordinator, offensive-minded head coaches getting hired is still here. But we got a couple of guys, DeMeco Ryans, Jonathan Gannon, who are defensive-minded guys. So still trying to even it out. But defensive-minded head coaches don't generally work.
Right.
In the modern NFL. The next couple guys, this is going to be relatively fast because not a lot of changes happening. But Matt Nagy, after Eric Bieniemy leaves to go to the Commanders, Matt Nagy takes over as offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I think Eric Bieniemy is probably going to be a good offensive coordinator elsewhere by himself, but Andy Reid runs the offense, so I don't. There's going to be no change for the Chiefs. Nagy is a bonehead and he's an idiot and he's a bad head coach. But he's been a good offensive coordinator at times, and sometimes you're just a good offensive coordinator or a bad head coach. So Chiefs should be fine there.
And it's still the Andy Reid offense either way.
Yeah, same Andy Reid offense either way. Chargers bring in Kellen Moore. So this is going to be a bit of a shift. He's one of the better offensive minds in the NFL, but I don't know if the bad parts of Dallas were Kellen Moore or Dallas. We're going to find out. But I think this guy is better than what Herbert and company had last year.
Yeah.
So I like that. But if you want to see what they're going to do offensively, probably going to be similar to what the Cowboys did last year. Now, I could see the Chargers in on a running back in this draft because they're probably letting Austin Eckler walk.
There's some rumors of that. I mean, Bijan to the Chargers would be fantasy dream.
Yeah, seriously. So we saw what they did with running backs. We saw what they did with wide receivers. He can run a competent NFL offense, and I wouldn't be concerned about anything with Kellen Moore going to the Chargers.
So you like it, then?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't think it's the best hiring.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It wasn't my first top choice for the Chargers, but I don't hate it.
Okay. Rams hire Mike LaFleur. as the offensive coordinator. The real news here is that head coach Sean McVay is staying.
Yeah.
So that
LaFleur is kind of just there to rebuild his reputation, I feel like.
After last year. I think if they went to the playoffs and they lost in the NFC Championship game, he probably would have retired. But he had such a bad year that he can't. So LaFleur not really changing anything from the offensive side. It's just kind of a revolving door of offensive coordinators because that everyone seems to be taking from that system. So that'll stay offensively. They'll stay pretty much the same for the Rams. Jets with Nathaniel Hackett. I don't get this. This is purely to get Rodgers. And I was thinking the other day. So many parallels to this freaking gross butt situation for the Jets. And Rick has told me, it's Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are going to get him. It's going to be okay. But I'm just thinking about the parallels. Denver. Really good team. It's good defense, good offense, get the weapons, quarterback away.
Right.
Trade for Russ. Here we go. Hire Nathaniel Hackett. All right, here we go. Saddle up.
Yep.
4 wins, 5 wins, whatever it was. Jets this year. Oh, defense is there. We got a defense. Oh, we got some offensive weapons. Here we go. Quarterback away. We're going to get Rodgers. Oh, we got Rodgers. Here we go. Nathaniel Hackett hired as the offensive coordinator. Too many parallels here for them to win more than 6 games.
I honestly could see it. I really can. I think from the Patriots fan perspective, if you're hoping one of the AFC teams just blows chunks, I think the Jets is probably the best bet. And he's one of the reasons for it.
Yeah.
That said,
he's awful.
Hackett in Green Bay was not an awful offensive coordinator.
Was that him or was it?
I don't think he was really the main guy, though.
Yeah.
He was kind of just along with the ride, and I think that's probably in Green Bay. It's going to be kind of mixed with that. It's going to be Rodgers and Hackett working together for that offense. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't love it.
I just don't know.
As long as Aaron Rodgers is there, I understand why they did.
Looking at how bad everything was in Denver last year, I don't even know what to look for. Obviously, if you get Rodgers, that changes things. You get Rodgers, Garrett Wilson's going to be really good. Lazard's still going to be somewhat of a fantasy asset. Brees hopefully is going to come back and be good. So it's there's a lot of good things for the Jets there. But Hackett does concern me because I think he's just a bad coach.
Yeah, I don't
if he went to a team, if Hackett, I would have hated this for the Chargers, but if Hackett went, no, not the Chargers. If Hackett went to the Chiefs or the Rams or something else, right, where he wasn't running the offense, I would be fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's running the offense for the Jets, that's where the concern is because, their head coach is going to be over in the defensive room for most of the week. So,
yeah, I don't know.
Not good news.
I'm not crazy about it. What about you missed one in between?
I did. I was going to talk about it last because I know I'm going to talk
then we'll
so
continue.
much about it. Titans hired Tim Kelly. This is something that I think I don't want to spend a lot of time on. Hold on a second. I got to pull it up. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on these offensive coordinators.
He was with the Titans last year. He just got promoted from within.
Oh, he got promoted from within. So
yeah, he was the passing game coordinator, and before that, he was the OC for Houston.
So they hired the guy that had the suck bag. Part of the team. All right,
the Titans, low key,
they're falling apart.
Tanking.
They're falling apart.
Yeah, but they're doing it kind of to themselves, which I think is actually low key smart because they weren't good enough to compete in the AFC, in my opinion. But they're going the other way. They're getting rid of all their veterans. They're cutting all these guys.
Yeah.
They're rumored to trade up in the draft.
They started that last year.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to retool, rebuild here. So yeah, I'm down on the Titans for sure, fantasy wise.
But the fact that it was an internal hire would sense to me that the offensive direction doesn't change. This has happened twice now under Mike Vrabel, and the offense has stayed generally the same. So there has been rumors about what's his name getting traded. Derrick Henry.
Who?
Derrick Henry.
I don't think that.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think Dalvin Cook is probably more likely to move. But there has been talks about Henry, while it's hot,
I would do it.
Yeah,
If you could get
trade
like a third round pick for Derrick Henry, I'd trade him.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's so I don't know why more teams don't do stuff like that. By the way, like how dirt cheap it is to get a all-world running back. Like why not? You think you're gonna hit on a third round running back better than you would have Derrick Henry on your football team? Like, all right.
Yeah. The only downside is Derrick Henry's 29 years old or whatever, 30 years old.
And then the Commanders bring in Eric Bieniemy. So we're gonna see.
Yep. Of course, though, he's not gonna have a freaking quarterback.
Yeah. Well, Sam Howell's a quarterback.
He could be good. I liked him. I thought Howell was an underrated prospect. That said, he also could suck.
Okay, so I think if this is going to be an offense, it's going to be similar to like what it looks like when Mahomes isn't on the field. So when you had what's his name? This could be the Brian Daboll hiring.
No, I love this hiring. It's just Commanders. And the Commanders too have weapons.
And this also
could
be like an internal
Jahad
thing
Dotson.
Too. Like what if it's them pre-hiring a head coach?
Yeah, I mean I like the hiring. I don't know what they're doing at quarterback.
The Commanders are like, yeah, we're gonna fire this idiot over here this year. Eric, you just gotta sit behind him and coach, and then we'll bring you on as head coach. Yeah, I mean there's so many bad things about their offense last year. Their obsession with Terry McLaurin is not one of them, but their obsession with Brian Robinson and him being a complete... I don't know. I just don't get it. So we'll see what Bieniemy does. I'm sure he'll find a twitchy 7th-round running back to run the ball with. But I think it's a good thing for
Gibson.
Yeah, hopefully it's Gibson. But I see good things coming for the Commanders with that hiring. All right, final one is New England Patriots firing their entire brain trust
on the offensive side of
the ball. And hiring Bill O'Brien. They brought in Adrian Clem to the offensive line coach. So they got coaches now. They got real people coaching, and not Bill Belichick robots. This is a good hire for the Patriots. Do you anticipate there being any... Like, we know what the Patriots have looked like with Bill O'Brien in the past. I watched years of it, so I can just say it off the top of my head, but they like the 2 tight ends. What they do in the offseason so far, they picked up Mike Gesicki. They have Hunter Henry, so there's your 2 tight ends. They love slot receivers. They picked up Juju Smith-Schuster. And I would imagine Tyquan Thornton's kind of like the Brandon Cooks. I don't know if he was a part of that offense, but the outside receiver back in the day. So you can kind of see the parallels. I don't know if they'll draft a receiver. You kind of hope that they do because they need one to kind of at least. They need something to pull coverage away from just blitzing Mac the whole game. So anyway, but Bill O'Brien coming in is definitely going to make the offense better for the New England Patriots. I will say, fantasy-wise, there's just nothing here that I want. I don't want Mac. I don't want Juju. I don't really want any receivers in the receiving core unless they get like a JSN or Zay Flowers or somebody like that who probably will get run immediately. There's not a whole ton in the receiver core that I like. And then the running game's really the only aspect that's there. Like, I haven't really, unless the Patriots go out and draft a running back in the first round, which has been rumored, or the second round or the third round, I can see the Patriots pounding the rock with Ramondre, and they haven't really gotten a replacement for him. So, for Damian Harris. So it's like, at this point, your running game's good. That should be a good fantasy asset. But outside of that, even with Bill O'Brien, I just don't see much being there. Juju might take on the slot receiver. You know, he's going to take on the slot receiver role, but he might get those targets that made Jacoby Myers a good flex option, which will work out for fantasy football. But I'm not drafting Juju Smith-Schuster in the top 7 rounds. So,
yeah, in terms of yards last year, the Patriots were 26th in the NFL. So they're definitely not a good offensive team. They're a little better points wise. I think they were like 19th, middle of the pack. But I do think their offense is better this year with Bill O'Brien. I do think it helps. And I agree with most of what you said. I think if they stand pat, though, I don't mind Juju. I think he's going to be a volume guy, kind of like Jacoby Myers. He'll get a lot of catches. In PPR formats, I think he's going to be a really solid flex. So I don't mind Juju. I don't even mind. See, I don't want to say it because I think only one of them will be good, and it could be the other one. But I wouldn't hate Hunter Henry this year. I don't hate him. I was kind of out on him last year because he just kind of relied on touchdowns in Mac's rookie year, and then year two, obviously the offense was a disaster last year. So I was out on him before the season, but with his such a low price, I don't hate him for this year because I do think the offense will be better. It'll be more like the year one we saw out of Mac, I think. And then Bill O'Brien's usage of tight ends, I think it's going to be like kind of like the Josh McDaniels offense. So I don't mind taking the flyer on Hunter Henry. But then again, it could be Gesicki who has a good year. So
yeah,
I think one of those two guys ends up.
I'm really curious to see how they work it out because they got a slot receiver in Juju, and then they had Gesicki who can't really block. He's not an inline tight end, so he's basically just a glorified slot tight end. I'm curious how they're going to run that, but we'll see. They did the same thing with Aaron Hernandez back in the day, so.
And then if they draft a guy too, like where does he fit in?
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's kind of where I was with the Patriots, where it's like I kind of wanted them to go after Quentin Johnston, only because like
he would just replace Parker.
He would basically just replace Parker. But like we just got Juju. Like if you were gonna replace Jacoby Myers, just draft Zay Flowers or EJ.
Yeah, but you could say last year the Patriots needed a receiver, right?
Yeah.
So if Juju replaces Myers, you could still probably use.
I just don't know where you're going to put him.
Yeah, I mean, if they get let's say if they draft JSN, I really don't know because he plays the slot mainly. I mean, he can't play the outside. Flowers is kind of like a guy you can put anywhere. He's kind of a gadget guy, so I think they'll figure it out with if they take Flowers. But it'll be interesting to see. And I don't know if they'll draft somebody, but I hope they do.
Okay, there you go. Head coach hirings for the 2023 season. Lots of coaching changes. There's a ton of defensive coaching changes, but we don't talk about those around here. So anyway, take this information, use it to your acknowledgement. We got a rookie mock 101 on Thursday. See you later, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.